That's the shared everything approach. Not really the most state-of-the-art approach for high availability clustering anymore, because what we now have is the shared nothing approach. And the shared nothing approach means that rather than having a single shared data silo, we now have a replica of the data that is for exclusive use of each and every individual node. And that means that on top of having server redundancy, that is to say, failover capability on the hardware side, we now also have that same redundancy and failover capability on the data side, which means that literally we can lose half of your data center and still be available because we have all of the data in the same place as our data nodes, and basically every single node has access to its own copy of the data. In terms of split brain, as I mentioned earlier, this is also something that can happen in these situations, but the circumstances, or the consequences, I should say, are far less dire, because if you now have nodes that are writing to the data in an uncoordinated fashion, you will have diverging data sets, which is certainly bad, no question about it, but it doesn't physically destroy any data. You literally only have to then select, okay, this data set has to survive, and these modifications need to be rolled back, but you don't need to bust out your backups. And that means, even if that happens, which in a properly configured cluster really should never happen, but even if it does, your risk of downtime or data destruction or data corruption is a much lesser one. The shared everything approach is the one where you typically use shared storage, whereas the shared nothing approach is the approach where DRBD comes into play. And in DRBD we have fully replicated data sets for the exclusive use of each and every node, and that greatly mitigates a lot of the risks that the shared everything approach typically comes with. That is actually this slideshow for today. Let me unshare that right now. And with that, that is our first lesson into the DRBD Total online course. As you can see, today's lesson was a little more theoretical, and some, or at least part of our next lesson will be too. But we feel that's very, very important before we actually go into the details of DRBD and clustering and how it's actually configured, to understand the concepts behind the whole thing. And that is why we're doing this this DRBD Total online lesson 1, always with the background in high availability clustering. What I would encourage you to do, either in the next few hours or maybe tomorrow, sometime before our next lesson, is to log on to Moodle and go through the review questions. And I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to take in the information that you've just heard. And if you have any questions about today's lesson, or also about the things that I mentioned earlier about WebEx and Moodle and so forth, please do take the time to voice those questions. And I will be back in 2 minutes, so that would be 5:43 UTC, and we'll then go through the Q&A. The audio broadcast will now end, and we will then do the Q&A questions in the Q&A window through WebEx. By the way, when you do post questions, it's often easy to confuse the chat and the Q&A window, so please use the Q&A window for that, because it enables me to broadcast my answers to all attendees, which usually leads to better results. With that, thank you for listening for right now. As I said, I will be hanging around and will be taking questions starting in 2 minutes. And if you have any further questions or any issues accessing Moodle or anything of that sort, then please do let us know. Write us an email, training@linbit.com, and we will be having our next webcast in 2 days. Thank you very much.